This AI moment hits different. It's the first technology designed not just to serve us, but to be us. I'm Baratunde Thurston, and on my new video podcast, Life with Machines, I'm going to talk to all kinds of folks, the people hitting the gas pedal on this transition and those trying to pump the brakes. Watch and listen to Life with Machines, powered by Lenovo in partnership with Intel. Intel Core Ultra 7 processor, powering Intel vPro.
Lenovo. This new year, enrich your life by learning a new language with Rosetta Stone. Their immersive courses ensure long-term language retention, and their True Accent feature even gives you pronunciation feedback. Plus, Rosetta Stone's flexible learning options let you learn anywhere, anytime. Start the new year off with a resolution you can reach. Today, listeners can get 50% off Rosetta Stone's lifetime membership by visiting rosettastone.com/pod50. That's 50% off unlimited access to 25 language courses for the rest of your life. Visit rosettastone.com/pod50.
You can support this podcast at patreon.com/partnersincrimemedia.
I'm Rebecca Lavoie, and this is Crime Writers On. Crime Writers On is the original true crime review podcast that digs into true crime, pop culture, other podcasts. And on this episode, a team of scientists and activists attempt to return the captive orca from Free Willy to the ocean. But doing so isn't as easy as in the movies. We'll discuss the popular podcast, The Good Whale from Serial Productions and the New York Times. Joining me to get that done and more is true crime author, TV journalist, and host of These Are Their Stories podcast, my husband, love of my life, Kevin Flynn. Hi, Kevin.
Hello, Rebecca.
Also with us is private investigator, certified pet detective, resident cat lady, and author of the Piper Green series of cozy mysteries, Laura Bricker. Hi, Laura.
Hey, Rebecca.
And finally, our resident doubting Thomas, the author of the City trilogy of novels, host of Rip Current, Strange Arrivals, and our Patreon Deep Dive Book Club podcast host, Toby Ball. Hi, Toby.
Hey, Rebecca.
Or Rip Current.
What did I say?
No, as the AI podcasters refer to it.
Oh, Rip Current.
Rip Current.
Yes. And if you listen to our after show on Patreon this week, you would understand what we're talking about. So, Kevin, this is Thursday's program.
It is.
What is coming up on next Monday's show?
We're talking about the Max documentary, Sons of Ecstasy.
What's that about?
Oh.
I tell you, I'm
Sex?
No. I don't think so.
Drugs?
I think it's a drug show. Yeah.
But ecstasy is also isn't it also a sex drug? Like people take it and then have sex.
Yeah.
That's a thing.
Do you want me to give the whole fucking thing away?
Oh, no.
People take all kinds of drugs and have sex,
I
Rebecca.
know, that's
it's not
true.
Just ecstasy.
That's true. It's a club drug though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's supposed to enhance every experience. So Kevin, I just want to ask you something, and I just want to reflect on this for a second. Can we just talk for a minute about how amazing our listeners are? As the news of the wildfires in California was starting to really become viral, and it was very clear that these were going to be a very devastating event for that state, we had listeners in our Facebook group offering up their homes to other listeners. Do we not have the best fans in the entire world?
Absolutely. And I think it's such it makes us really proud because you try to do what you can on the podcast to make it a quality experience. And when you have folks that in real life are genuinely kind to one another and make their own independent relationships with one another that are separate from conversations about the podcast. I mean, that's just really lovely. And so we're very grateful. And I kind of wonder, when these folks get together, do they talk about us at all?
Kevin.
Do they care about us, or are they just...
You're such a baby, Kevin.
I don't know. I just maybe I feel a little insecure. But that's neither here nor there. We do have wonderful, wonderful people. And we would say if you want to join that wonderful crowd and you're still on Facebook, and I'm guessing that maybe you are, then just join us at our official Facebook group. What is this? The
official Crime Writers On Facebook discussion group.
Okay, I think official is in the title.
Yeah,
right?
You just find us on Facebook. We have a page, a regular old page, and then there's a link there right at the top. We've pinned the post on how to join the group. Join the group. If you're a dick, by the way, probably the part of the reason why our group is so great is because I am merciless about just kicking someone out if they seem to be ruining the vibe in some way. And I usually will send them a note explaining why, unless I don't want to. But yeah, it's quality people, right, Kevin?
Quality people.
All right. Speaking of things that are depressing and not at all heartwarming, like our Facebook group, would you like to go ahead and discuss the thing we're talking about?
Oh yeah, sure. I didn't think that was a rhetorical question. But,
All right, let's go ahead and drop that first clip right now. Leading off.
The movie poster is what most people remember. It's the image that was absorbed into the culture, a still from the film's climax. Willy in mid-flight against an orange sunset, jumping over a breakwater. The ocean beckons. The boy stands just below Willy, beneath an arc of sea spray, a triumphant arm pointing to the sky.
Audiences were charmed by Free Willy, the 1993 movie about a captive orca returning to the wild. But when the world learned the real whale was wasting away in a Mexican amusement park, scientists and activists united in a project to reintroduce Keiko the whale to the open ocean, just like his on-screen counterpart.
He looks great. When's he going? Like, going where? And they said, well, back to the wild. And my comment was, that's not a killer whale, that's a golden retriever.
But learning the skills to fend for himself in the sea proved difficult for an orca who grew up in an aquarium, not in a killer whale pod. Meanwhile, as the public waited for a cinematic conclusion, disagreement grew about how best to help Keiko and whether his lifelong reliance on humans made it impossible for him to return to the ocean.
We broke him, so we bought him, and this care is what we owe him. We have to help him as best we can respond to those bewildering questions he can't seem to answer on his own. What do I do? Where do I belong?
From Serial Productions and the New York Times comes The Good Whale. Host Daniel Alarcon recounts the ambitious, multinational experiment to rewild the famous orca, as well as the scientific and ethical struggles around the effort. The series also includes a controversial creative choice, presenting Keiko's unseen journey through the ocean in the form of a musical episode. Spoiler alert, we're going to be talking about significant plot points from The Good Whale. So if you want to remain spoiler-free, although this was a news event that you could probably also look up, go to the estimated time code in our show notes for our thumbs up or thumbs down reviews.
You just described virtually everything that we review.
That's true. Except for The Unborn, where those weren't their real names, so it was harder to look up.
Okay.
Right?
Although we could guess immediately what the fuck happened.
That's part of the genius.
That's right.
It's part of the genius.
So, Laura, I'm just going to tip my hand to you right now. I found this podcast almost impossible to listen to. And you have referred to it in your notes as the Happy Valley of podcasts.
Yeah. So I started listening to this. And I was not even 2 minutes in. And I think I sent a note in our Slack and I said, oh my God, the first 2 minutes are going to do me in here. I was like, we had Depressing Valley. Now we have the Depressing Whale. I was like, just shoot me.
For the last 7 years, a tank in this polluted, landlocked megacity more than 7,000 feet above sea level has been his home. Before that, it was a marine park in Canada where he was bullied by the other orcas. Before that, it was a tank in a big concrete building in Iceland, where he was kept for about 3 years, unable to see the sky.
I can listen to crime. I can watch crime. Animal stories like this are fucking heartbreaking to listen to. Like, not even the first 5 minutes. This is the first 2 minutes. And they're like, and he was taken away from his family. And then he was crying like a baby. And I'm like, fucking shoot me.
And then he interrupts because he was a baby.
Yes. And I was like, on my commutes around the state for work and pleasure, I was like, oh, please make this end. It was so sad.
Yeah. I just want to be clear about something I said, but I found this almost impossible to listen to. I'm not saying it's a bad podcast. It is just, there is something too, there's actually a science behind why animal stories are so hard for some people to listen to versus human stories. It has to do with a level of relatability. So there's like this sense that we can relate to the human stories in a way that we find impossible with the animal stories. And of course we have also have anthropomorphization, but there's a whole brain science behind this that I read an article about once. And I am the quintessential example of that. I was trying to talk to Kevin about my feelings about this podcast in our kitchen and I broke out in tears. It's really, really difficult for me. So if you're one of those people too, just know that it's difficult. So Toby, you actually have a note addressing that this is hard, but other things don't seem to be for certain people, right?
Yeah, well, I think it's just kind of interesting and this is both for like individuals and then like sort of societally, like what we're willing to put a lot of emotion into and what we're not. Like the whole like separating Keiko from his parents is like, that's happening at the border to all kinds of families.
Yep.
And nobody's raising, part of it I think is it's the old Stalin, like one death is a tragedy, a million is a statistic. But like, I'm sort of the opposite of that. Like, I don't like cruelty to animals. I don't want to say I'm like indifferent to that. And like, this is clearly a sad and tragic story. But the idea that saving this one killer whale is so much more important than what a similar amount of money could be spent on to alleviate suffering among actual people, it just seems a little out of proportion. And it is kind of it's not that I object to it or whatever, but I do find it interesting because it's not kind of the way I conceive of things.
Yeah. Which is valid, by the way. There's nothing wrong with that. I actually admire you and I wish I was more like you. I'm
not apologizing for it.
I know.
It's just the way it is.
No.
It's something about also orca whales for me, like
whales and dolphins.
Whales and dolphins are okay. Like dolphins, I don't feel like the same.
Don't watch The Cove. You will not be able to get through it.
But whales, like I remember one time when Will was little, we were down in like Fort Lauderdale and we were going to go to the Miami Sea Aquarium, and I found out about the whale there that was living in like the smallest tank ever, and it was like, I can't go to this place. I can't. And like my ex-husband was like, oh, we can go. It's fine. And we went. And I was like so upset that I had succumbed to going to this place. I could think of nothing else for like weeks afterwards because I felt like such a horrible person.
Well, there was one of the guests that kind of explained that about whales, that he said that they're otherworldly.
Whales are one of the things that is just so otherworldly, so majestic, just incredibly, amazingly intelligent, social, powerful, and that means something.
I mean, we haven't done an awful lot of titles having to deal with animals. There was, Don't Fuck with Cats, and a lot of people sort of had that same kind of reaction because it was explicitly about cruelty to animals.
But there was revenge for that animal.
There was revenge. Tiger King is something that comes to mind, although the focus wasn't explicitly on the animals in question here. It was on, the people involved. But, so as you guys say, like, we tend to view animals through our own lenses quite often, anthropomorphizing them, but still, like, cats are cats, and we sort of relate to the different qualities that cats have that are familiar with us, and dogs as well. And, for some reason, like, whales are just different, because I think once you learn about them, you see them as these social animals, and especially when you learn about like what needs to happen for Keiko to survive, or freed Willy in order to survive. It's not just like being a lion or a tiger, roaming the Serengeti and just waiting for a gazelle. A gazelle, and just doing that. It's because it does require not only the ability to teach yourself how to hunt and whatever, but to be part of a pod,
to speak the language,
they have their own language. Right. So that's all about the social aspect of the animal, and so we can relate to the social aspects of ourselves, right? So that's one of the reasons why I think we have a different feeling about them and about the story. And I think like the best parts are the things about the questions raised, or the feelings that coincide with things like loneliness and rejection and those kinds of aspects. Again, putting sort of human feelings and human perceptions on what's actually going on. But those were the things that connected with me.
Yeah. Kevin, you also have the note that this feels like an extended version of This American Life. And if you heard the credits, you know that Ira Glass was an editor on the podcast. But it definitely had that very public radio sort of straight narrative feel.
Well, I mean, it's from Serial Productions. The tone and setup is nearly identical to all the stuff that they do, which, again, is sort of descended from This American Life or whatever. But it felt like a very long, maybe a 2-part episode of This American Life because of the subject matter and certainly the way it sounded. I think that like when people are going to talk about this, it's going to be looking at episodes 1 through 4 and episode 6. Episode 5, which you alluded to, which is essentially a musical number.
Format breaking.
A genre bending.
This American Life has done this, by the way. They did a whole musical episode.
You're giving this way too much credit.
It was the stupidest thing I ever heard. All I could think was, I can't wait to hear what Toby has to say about this fucking song.
Well, let's pull, but I think the discussion would be, we got to pull episode 5 out.
No, episode 5 is part of the whole.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I was just saying,
but you liked it.
But...
right?
Yeah,
it's okay that you liked it, Kevin. It's okay.
I thought it was an interesting story, and I thought that the way they told it, the production value is good. That was your question, right?
Yeah.
And so that's the answer, is that I thought that was well done, but I think that like the discussion about episode 5 needs to be set aside and be about episode 5 because it's so different from the rest of it.
Let's have it right now. There actually was a musical episode of This American Life. They staged it and they did different stories from the show as musicals. There was this older episode. I do believe, by the way, that was the inspiration for this episode, in my opinion. Toby, what did you think about the existence of an execution of this musical episode?
So, first of all, I'll say that I do like it when podcasts like take risks. And I think part of the thing with taking risks is sometimes it doesn't pay off. This to me, like, didn't pay off in like the biggest fucking possible way. I mean, I will admit that I could not handle listening to that entire fucking song. So I kept like forwarding like 30 seconds and listening to the next for a little bit and stuff. But, you know, it's not any kind of music that I would listen to normally anyway. But, you know, this idea of like trying to put yourself in the head of a freaking orca swimming around and then like singing about it and stuff. It's like, okay, like, you know, maybe if you're in like a band and you're like 18 years old and it seems like a good idea, like, hey man, we just learned about whales in science class. Now I'm going to write a tune about them and we'll play about it in my buddy's basement. But the idea that like Serial, like the New York Times, and taking a look at like these questions about whales and, you know, how do you figure out what's right for them? How do you sort of try and understand them or whatever? Like in the middle of it throws in this ridiculous song is like, I don't quite get how that works with the rest of the story, which I think is asking some interesting questions about man's relation to animals, and in particular, like animals that we consider to like have thoughts beyond sort of instincts or reflexes. This kind of like was just not the direction that I think they should have taken, because it seemed to be a demonstration of like how not to try and figure it out. So I don't know if maybe it was some kind of like subtle underhanded, like this is the kind of shit that some people do and check it out because the rest of this is about like the real stuff. I don't know, but it just seemed weird. So A, for thinking outside the box, but in this particular case, I wish they hadn't.
Laura?
Like I said, I was listening to this and I was like, oh my God, I can't wait for Toby's reaction. And then I was like, I should learn this song so I can sing it to Toby, but I don't want to listen to this song again. So then I was like, it was like I was listening to a Disney Pixar movie, like Finding Nemo or something, but about a whale. And I was like, okay, maybe this is actually like some sort of like very clever attempt to bring us back to where this all began, which is we're giving animals human emotions and free willy. And that's like why we're doing this stupid song, to sort of show that like, that's what got us into this whole situation, is like ascribing like these thoughts and feelings and making these animals into movie characters but then I was just like, no, it felt so out of sync with the rest of the podcast to me. Because when it came on, I was like, oh, that's weird. I wonder why this episode is only like 15 or 13 minutes long. I'm like, that's weird. And then they're like, we're going to drop journalism and we're just going to do this song. And I'm like, what the fuck? But it reminded me of like, in my head, I could see like a little cartoon movie of like little Keiko, like swimming around, like, I am free, but nobody wants to talk to me, or whatever the song was. So I would have liked to see, instead of that thing, a little bit more about like the zoom out of like the lessons learned from this. Cause they hint at that, they talk about it a little, but like, I'm like, this happened a long time ago. Like, what's the legacy of this experiment? Have they tried to free other whales? Like, what has happened to other whales? Are we not capturing whales anymore? Like, I would have liked to have some more context about that part of the story in a broader sense than this song that just, I was driving and I was like, oh my God.
See, if it was me and somebody was like, you're going to fucking put this song in this podcast or the podcast is not going to happen, I would have been like, fine. But then right after it, we're going to put the fucking discussion in which we decided that it was going to be okay to put this song in this podcast is going to be there so people understand the decision-making process, because for me, it's completely opaque. Sorry, but Kevin, you liked it more.
Yeah, I mean, right. They had that right. Daniel did talk about like what the decision process was about that, right?
It wasn't very long. It was just sort of the setup. It was like, we can never know. So we're going to do this instead.
Try different things, yeah.
Anything we say about this period of time is much closer to make-believe than to reporting. So to get inside those mysterious weeks, we're going to have to leave journalism behind. Just for a little bit, I promise. Just for this one short episode, we're going to do something different.
But it wasn't like a meeting where people were like, yeah, I don't know if this is going to be such a good idea. No, God damn it, we're doing this song.
Well, I mean, yeah, I think it's a bold choice and it's divisive. And so, like, should there be a musical number? I don't know. Is this, the way to describe something that admittedly you can't describe, it cannot be known, but we're going to explore the themes in a different way? I do give them credit for that. But I will say the song itself, the musical number, I actually think, first of all, just take this out. Say it was the 5 episode. It's not even that. Take the 5 episodes, say that's the whole podcast. And then you find out later, said, oh, these 2 guys who happen to be EGOTs decided that they were so inspired by the story, they wrote this song from Keiko's perspective. And just take it like that. And then just listen to that and evaluate that piece of art like that. I will tell you that I listened to it and I did well up. Because I thought all these emotions that we're talking about, they can swell with the right musical chord, with the right singing voice, hitting on certain themes. When I heard that and talked about sort of like the whale, his vulnerability, that he's lost in the world, the things that used to happen to him, the loneliness, the danger, the sadness, I thought that it really as a piece of art brought that through in a way that touched me.
'Cause for days upon days upon days upon days I was famous. Now it's days upon days upon days upon days and I'm nameless. Aimless.
It's silly, I'm sure, that it's a whale, whatever, but as a piece of art, I actually thought it was a good song and I connected with the emotions that it tried to convey. All right. Now, we don't have to sing for our supper here. We'll just say, come to patreon.com/partners in crime media.
Aren't you in fact singing for your supper right now?
Well, I don't know. I'm actually literally singing.
It's the business section, people.
Yeah. Do I need to play on your emotions with swelling minor chords?
I would just say it would have been way better as a post-credit experience that you could opt out of if you wanted
to. Well, there is a music video.
Oh, fucking great.
There is a music video, and this podcast is also available in Spanish. Our podcasts have neither of those.
Yeah. Well, Danielle is also the host of Radio Ambulante, which is the Spanish version of it's not This American Life, but it's the equivalent in Spanish language.
Yeah. So what you can do is if you come to patreon.com/partners in crime media, you get all sorts of exclusive content. That includes the Crime Writers On After Show, Married with Podcast or Advice Podcast, Laura Bricker's Leave It to Bricker Podcast, and Rebecca's updates on the Karen Reed case in the Readathon. Another great thing that we have is Toby Ball's Deep Dive Book Club podcast, where Toby gets together a panel, and each month they talk about a really great nonfiction book or sometimes a mystery. And Toby has been working on his slate for 2025. Toby, what are some of the books that people should be checking out of the library to brush up on for your discussions?
Well, I'll tell you, the first book we're going to do is called Murder in the Bayou by Ethan Brown. It's a little hard to announce them before I've actually signed people up because sometimes books don't get enough people to sign up for, so I have to switch them out or whatever. I'll give another title though, which I think will probably get people, which is, and this is in 1, 2, 3, 4, the 5th book will be A Death in Belmont by Sebastian Junger of The Perfect Storm fame. So there's a couple, but start with Murder in the Bayou. And stay tuned for updates in future weeks.
Now, another way you can support the show is that we have an Amazon storefront where you can see some of our favorite things. So when you go to Amazon, it's amazon.com/shop/Crime Writers On. Amazon actually gave us our own page and our own storefront. So you can see some of our favorite things. Rebecca, what are this week's Amazon recommendations?
Well, Kevin, this one has to do with you.
Okay.
And it is all of those Amazon Essentials flannel soft pants that you have been enjoying wearing that I got you for Christmas, like these pajama lounge pants and these cute plaid patterns from Amazon Essentials.
And Toby Ball, what are your listener-inspired Toby Ball's deep cut recommendations?
We're going to start off with the Verbac CET enzymatic toothpaste. Eliminates bad breath by removing plaque and tartar buildup. Best pet dental care toothpaste. Poultry flavor, which is my favorite flavor of toothpaste.
Who doesn't like brushing their teeth with chicken?
2.5 ounces. And this, I didn't have this when I got my tattoo, but if you must. Tattoo numbing cream, 8 hours maximum strength tattoo numbing cream, 6.5% lidocaine painless tattoo numbing cream, professional grade numbing for tat. And don't confuse it with the poultry-flavored toothpaste.
No, don't confuse those two
things. That's a throwback to last
Do you know people
episode.
use that for as well as tattoo stuff? They use it for at-home dermatology. I'll just leave it there.
At-home dermatology?
Like if you have like a cyst or like something and you want to pop it, but it's going to hurt a lot. They buy that shit. Yeah.
How many ounces is that tub of the lidocaine? What does it say?
It doesn't say. It just says it's 6.5% lidocaine.
Lidocaine's great stuff. They use it in hemorrhoid cream too. It's fucking great.
How many tattoos you're getting? You need to purchase a whole jar of this.
If you're a tattoo artist, you would need to have that on hand.
Oh, okay, that's good.
Jesus,
Slather
Kevin.
some of this on.
Or you can just, for the family.
For the family.
Send it to your friend in prison.
Yeah. So shop us first at amazon.com/shop/crime writers on. We earn commissions on qualified purchases.
Kevin, before we wrap up the business section, do we have any Patreon patron saints of the week this week?
Our Patreon patron saints are Alex Oliveira and Kelly Phelan.
Oh my goodness.
Bless you.
Bless you guys. Thank you so much, Kelly, for supporting us on Patreon. And Alex, longtime fan and evangelist for the show.
Kelly too, yeah.
We really appreciate you guys. You know, Alex was the person behind the parody Twitter accounts for us for many years, including
Flat Toby,
Bobby Tall, NH. And I believe Alex is the reason why we were able to get me verified on Twitter many years ago, because Kevin got verified and I didn't, even though we had exactly the same fucking resume. And they were like, it's the whole thing about, could you be confused with somebody else? And Alex made a bunch of fake Rebecca Lavoie accounts.
Oh, I remember that.
And I got approved next time because I was able to use his example. Anyway, thank you,
How's
Alex.
that check working out for you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have it anymore. It's fine.
Yeah, well, there you go.
I don't want it either, so it's fine.
All you got to do is pay money every month now, and you can
To look valid.
Yeah, look valid.
And complain about, nonsensical things.
I'm gonna have a verified Twitter account that's Keiko the Whale.
Oh, don't do that.
And my check mark, and so people will think it's really me.
And it will just play the song over and over again.
Play the song over and over
And it's
again.
me, I'm free, and nobody wants to talk. I don't know, was that the song?
All right, Kevin, does that end our business section?
Thus ends the business section.
I'll fade that music out right now. Kevin, who's our next sponsor for this podcast?
Oh, we're brought to you by HelloFresh.
HelloFresh.
Tired of figuring out what's for dinner night after night?
Yes.
Especially on those busy weekdays?
Yes.
Get dinner done an easier way thanks to HelloFresh.
HelloFresh.
Now, look, I think that, you can sell a product on a lot of different points. We could talk about the quality of the food, the price point. Let me just talk about convenience for a second.
Do it.
Okay. There's a lot of us that when we do takeout, we're going to get pizza or get something from the Chinese restaurant. We're doing that not because we've been looking forward all day to that restaurant.
Right.
We've been doing it because
we're tired.
5 or 6 o'clock comes around and you haven't thought about it. And so you're looking for something convenient.
Correct.
You're willing to spend a couple of bucks for that convenience so somebody
More
can
than
bring...
a couple.
Oh, yeah. I mean, when we get Chinese food...
It's like $100. Wild.
So I'm offering you something that is both convenient and at a great price point. It's HelloFresh. It's easy to find time to eat well. They have 50 wholesome, hassle-free meals, so you got a lot to choose from. And HelloFresh's new ready-made meals, they go from the fridge to your fork in just 3 minutes.
Amazing. So get up to 10 free meals and a free high-protein item for life at HelloFresh.com/CWO10FM.
CWO10FM.
1 item per box with active subscription. Free meals applied as discount on first box. New subscribers only. Varies by plan. That's up to 10 HelloFresh meals. Just go to HelloFresh.com/CWO10FM.
CWO10FM.
FM for free meals. So, Kevin, this show left you cold?
Yeah, but the winter clothes at Quince will never leave you cold.
Nice.
Did you not get what you wanted for Christmas?
I got
No,
a
I'm
lot
not
of
asking
it.
you. I'm not asking you. I'm talking to the listener.
Oh, okay.
Did you not get what you wanted for Christmas?
They didn't.
Nor did you not get what you wanted for your December birthday, where everybody just gives you a gift and says this is for both. What a ripoff, right?
Lame.
Super lame. All right, well,
Here's one shoe for your birthday, another shoe for Christmas.
I like how that works, yeah. One glove, yeah. Treat yourself to a little something without spending a fortune with Quince. So all Quince items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands because they partner directly with top factories and cut out the middleman.
Oh, yeah.
Passing the savings on to you. And of course, they use premium fabrics and finishes for that luxury feel in every piece. Rebecca, I know that you are the unofficial ambassador of Quince to the world.
And I did some Christmas shopping there. Want to hear what I got?
Yeah, tell us.
I mean,
about
you
it.
saw. I gave your daughter an incredible faux fur jacket. I have the same same one, white, super fuzzy one. It's amazing. And I gave one of our kids a cashmere fisherman's sweater from Quince. It's so beautiful.
That will definitely keep them warm. So treat yourself this winter without the luxury price tag. Go to quince.com/crime for 365-day returns plus free shipping on your order. That's QUINCE.com/crime to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/crime.
This new year, enrich your life by learning a new language with Rosetta Stone. Their immersive courses ensure long-term language retention, and their true accent feature even gives you pronunciation feedback. Plus, Rosetta Stone's flexible learning options let you learn anywhere, anytime. Start the new year off with a resolution you can reach. Today, listeners can get 50% off Rosetta Stone's lifetime membership by visiting rosettastone.com/pod50. That's 50% off unlimited access to 25 language courses for the rest of your life. Visit rosettastone.com/pod50.
So, Laura, one thing that was interesting to me about the podcast was learning the logistics of how you actually move a whale from a place to a different place in a sling in an airplane, covering its body with some sort of salve to keep it moist or whatever. So in addition to that detail, we also have some pretty good sourcing. What did you think of some of the surprising voices that we heard in the podcast?
Yeah, I think what was interesting about this is we heard from a lot of the people that were involved at the time this happened. From the trainers to the marine biologist people to the guy who used to capture orcas, like that was his job. It was awful listening to that part. That was the part I was like, I couldn't even deal when he was talking about how they used to chase them with fireworks to drive them apart and capture them. And I was like, oh, this is awful. But he had a change of heart. Like, I don't want to do that anymore. And I realized like what I was doing wasn't right. And so now he's on the other side helping out. You know, then we had the now adult man who was a little kid when Keiko came swimming up to his dock after his big journey when he was out. Yeah. And like that little kid, can you imagine? Like, kids have imaginary friends. He's like, I've got a pet whale. Like, and they're like, yeah, okay, kid. Like, yeah, so do I. But
is his name Snuffleupagus?
Yeah, but he's down there like talking about like, you know, how he was out there, like, and he jumps in and he swims with him and all of that. So I think they definitely had all of the players that they could have access to. It was very well sourced. There was a lot of different voices involved in this. A lot of people who are able to be reflective now and look back now that some time has passed about the role that they played then, what they would have done differently. And, you know, I thought that was interesting.
So the podcast, the real conflict in the podcast is, did humans push this experiment too much for this particular whale? So the reason the podcast is called The Good Whale is because Keiko is described as like a 1 in a million whale, that he was more like a golden retriever than a whale. Like he truly needed and seemed to enjoy interacting with people. And there is this incredible sequence, time in his life, which in my opinion, it was the ideal time where they should have stopped, where he's living in a giant ocean pen in Iceland. And there are these two scientists who have to live in a cute little cabin every day and just like, you know, take the leader boat out and take him for a walk and like do all of these things with him. And it really does bring up this dispute over whether this particular whale is suited for the things the human beings have decided that he needs to do, including learning how to hunt, learning how to dive, and then ultimately being introduced to other whales and being put in the wild. So what do you think about that dispute, Toby? Because that really is the heart of the conflict here.
Yeah, it's a tough one. And I think that when I can't remember who he's talking to at the end, when they're like, well, when you had stopped, would you have stopped at this point or at this point or at this point? And it's like, yeah, well, I guess that's really the question. You know, I wish there'd been a little bit more context given, because there's plenty of other kinds of animals that get repatriated that are also social animals. And there wasn't any sort of like, this has been the experience with these animals. The sort of impossibility of sort of understanding how a whale thinks to the degree that it thinks. It seemed like to me it would be overwhelming to be in a position where you're having to make that decision, because you just don't know. Like, you think about, like, part of it was he's going to need to be in a pod because that's the way they work. They're social animals. That's how they hunt. He's going to starve if he's not in a pod and all these things. But we know from like human children who've been raised in isolation, when they are brought into society, they have severe delays in socialization that keeps them from interacting with people in a way that's normal. So with whales, like, is that going to be the same thing? And if so, like, how do you even overcome that? And that seemed to me to be one of the unknowns. So it's like, we're going to try and get him physically ready to the best of our knowledge. But they did that thing where they took him out and there's a whale pod and they're trying to intercept the whale pod with him. And he's just like, holy fuck, I'm out of here.
He was not ready. Yeah.
Yeah. And he takes off. But it's even then, it's just like, how do you interpret that? Like, what is the process that he's going through? Is he's like, holy shit, there's a whole bunch of huge fucking whales coming at me and I got to get out of here.
Who speak a language that I don't understand.
Yeah, it's just so foreign. I thought that was the interesting question. I think the strength of this podcast is that it asked a lot of interesting questions, and I'm sure other people want to weigh in on this, but I think there's a big sort of factor that's missing in this that I thought kind of kept it from getting to the source of a lot of things that are going on, right, in wildlife versus humans.
Kevin, what did you think about that conflict in the story between the different people who had different thoughts about how far to push this animal?
Yeah, I thought the most interesting one for me was when they were in Oregon, and you know, there ends up being like this division among, you know, the scientists and the people that actually like understand, like, it's kind of cool to have this whale here. You know, it's good for business and whatnot. And I think that seemed foreseeable as an issue. It's certainly the clearest reason that you would want an orca in captivity is commercialism and tourism and things like that. And, you know, it's kind of against the whole reason for having this project in the first place was not to just like move him from this tiny warm water, salt added swimming pool in Mexico and just bring him to a place where the water is cooler and fresher or whatever. And we'll just give him, you know, way more frozen halibut versus getting him back into the ocean. And it seemed like the motivation for keeping him like wasn't even like, well, I don't know. This doesn't seem like this is the kind of whale that can survive on its own.
That woman, to be fair to her, she also said he gets sick too often to survive in the wild. Mm-hmm. And then how did he die?
He had a lung infection.
He got sick.
Yeah. So, right. So, I mean, the question always sort of is throughout this, and they explicitly ask it at the end, which is like, what was or would have been the best thing? And you can't say, well, it would be best not to like bring him in and capture him in the first place. That's kind of a cop-out to the idea, right? Probably you're right. But we have him now, and what do we do with him?
What do you think?
Well, I think...
Where should they have stopped?
I think you're right. And I think this is what Daniel also said, that perhaps Iceland was the best place.
In that big pen.
Well, that's a choice. We made the choice to bring him to a net pen area in Iceland in his home waters. We could have left him there. Would you have left him there in a sea pen?
To be honest, yeah, I think I might have.
It was open, and maybe just like leave the gate open, right? And just let, if he wants to wander out, and maybe he'll make the decision. But it's hard to not just teach him the skills, but it's not like a dolphin where you think that you're communicating, and like maybe you can literally teach. I don't know. He just liked humans, just like a puppy dog, you know? So it's like, try to say to a dog, you know, your family pet, like, okay, run off into the woods and be with the wolves. Like, it's just, the dog isn't going to do that. And This is what it was, you know, this is what this was.
What really keeps striking me and I kept thinking about was the language thing. Like, he seemed to speak like or understand the human. He was very trainable, obviously. Like, it was amazing what they were able to teach him how to only follow one boat, for instance, and ignore all the others. Like, he was very trainable. They knew he related to humans because they would hide when they wanted to train him, right? Then when they wanted to train him to ignore people, they knew they had to hide. So they knew that they had this connection with him. They knew that he sort of understood the language of being with humans. And I'm not saying he understood, you know, English or Icelandic or anything, but he understood the behavior of humans in that language, but he could not ever understand the language and behavior of other whales because that wasn't his life. Laura, did that strike you too, that he was like, it was a foreign world to him?
Yeah, it struck me. I think the part that struck me was they said like he would try to make sounds, but it was like almost like a 2-year-old or like a toddler.
He was delayed.
Who didn't know the language. And that felt so sad to me listening to that because like you have that question, like you're like, oh, he's going to know the language because he's a whale and we're going to let him out there. But he didn't know the language because his language skills didn't develop because of the age he was taken. So I was really hung up on that when they described him as like a baby that was learning to talk. But they said the only thing that was kind of the same was like laughter. And they thought that these whales could have this one sound that was kind of like laughter, but that he never really sounded like the other whales.
Do you hear it? Keiko just sounds different. One scientist who had heard Keiko's vocalizations described them as not fully developed. To me, they sound almost childlike, Noticeably so. If not to the untrained ear, then certainly to the wild orcas at that day's soup.
That was sad. I was like, this is awful. I'm like, what are these people doing?
Yeah.
This new year, enrich your life by learning a new language with Rosetta Stone. Their immersive courses ensure long-term language retention, and their true accent feature even gives you pronunciation feedback. Plus, Rosetta Stone's flexible learning options let you learn anywhere, anytime. Start the new year off with a resolution you can reach. Today, listeners can get 50% off Rosetta Stone's lifetime membership by visiting rosettastone.com/pod50. That's 50% off unlimited access to 25 language courses for the rest of your life. Visit rosettastone.com/pod50.
This cold and flu season, Instacart is here to help deliver all of your sick day essentials. Whether you're in prevention mode and need vitamins, hand sanitizer, and that lemon tea your Nana swears by, or you're in healing mode and need medicine, soup, and a lot more tissues. Simply download the Instacart app to get sick day supplies that reinvigorate or relieve, delivered in as fast as 30 minutes. Plus, enjoy $0 delivery fees on your first 3 orders. Excludes restaurant orders. Service fees and terms apply.
Create your oasis with Thuma, a modern design company crafting simple, elevated furniture from premium, eco-friendly materials. Thuma's core collection, the classic bed, nest dresser, and pillar bookshelf, combines the technique of Japanese joinery with thoughtful design for timeless style and lasting quality. Assembly is quick and easy, taking just 5-ish minutes with no tools required. Explore the full collection at thuma.co or visit their flagship location in New York City. For $100 off your first bed, head to thuma.co. That's thuma.co.
Where'd you get those shoes? Easy. They're from DSW. Because DSW has the exact right shoes for whatever you're into right now. You know, like the sneakers that make office hours feel like happy hour. The boots that turn grocery aisles into runways. And all the styles that show off the many sides of you, from daydreamer to multitasker and everything in between, because you do it all in really great shoes. Find a shoe for every you at your DSW store or dsw.com.
All right, let's do what we do. Let's let our listeners know, should they check out The Good Whale, a podcast from Serial Productions and the New York Times? Laura Bricker, thumbs up or thumbs down for this podcast?
So this is a really hard one for me to decide because I can listen to crime stories all the time. Animal stories affect me differently in a way that, especially this kind of animal story, I think I relate to animals in a way they feel vulnerable to me. They feel like a child or somebody that can't speak for themselves, that can't speak up for themselves. So I definitely I was really struggling listening to this. However, the thing is, this podcast was well done. They had good sourcing. They had good interviews. They had access to people that were involved in this case. I think the thing that was lacking for me that I wish was this happened a long time ago. So what was the legacy of this case? What has happened since then? What has happened to other whales? Have they tried to release other whales? We don't know because that wasn't something that was covered. So I felt like I wanted more of a zoom out than we got. I'm going to go thumbs sideways with this because I can't go thumbs up because I was so sad listening to it and I was calling this a depressing whale. I can't go thumbs down because it was a well done podcast. But for me, it was just something that I really had a hard time with.
Toby Ball, thumbs up or thumbs down for The Good Whale?
Yeah, I think I'm a strong, mild thumbs up, if that is such a thing.
A diagonal thumb.
Yeah, I did. I thought it was pretty. I mean, it's well told. They've got good interviews. If you just skip episode 5, I think it's pretty solid. I think it asks a lot of interesting questions. There's a lot of stuff to talk about, even sort of beyond what we did in our main interview. But there's a lot of stuff to think about what we owe animals and why certain animals are sort of picked out as being super, super important or representative of something where other animals aren't, so on and so on. I don't think it's going to be in my top 10 at the end of the year. And I think, again, if you are like Laura and animal stories affect you differently than the other stories do, then, that this is sort of trigger warning-ish, because it's about a shitty life that this orca had and people who tried to make it less shitty, but you can sort of draw your own conclusions about how all that stuff went. So anyway, yeah, strong, mild thumbs up.
Kevin Flynn.
I'm going thumbs up, and I understand, for a lot of people, just this is disqualifying. I mean, it's not explicit, and neglect is abuse, but it's not violent. But nonetheless, I can see why people are like, okay, this isn't for me. And a lot of that has to do with sort of the emotions attached to this. And I thought it was really, as far as storytelling goes, as far as reporting goes, I thought this was done very, very well. And they were able to capture the emotions associated with, presumably, what Keiko might have been feeling. I emotionally connected with this in a way that I did not think I would. And episode 5 is, I'm sure, very divisive among listeners. A musical number, which they use to illustrate, a part of this whale's journey, his interiority that, you obviously aren't going to get. The musical number, like I said, as a piece of art, really touched me. And I thought, because I'm a softie
and you
anyway.
Alone.
And maybe me alone. And that's fine. That's fine. And I think if you think that was crazy and you just think of episodes 1 through 4 and 6, and that's fine. But I will just say that for me, it took some bold risks. For me, they paid off. And while overall, it's very much like a typical serial production thing, this is very much like Nice White Parents, not so much like perhaps the Trojan Horse Affair, but sober and thoughtful and smartly produced. That's what you're going to get. But also, because it happens to be about animals, it hits differently.
Yeah, I'm like Laura. I don't know how to talk about this podcast. The reporting is great for the most part. The sourcing is great. The central conflict is very interesting. I hated listening to this podcast, and I think a lot of people would hate listening to this podcast. I hated it. Every minute of listening to it was torture for me. So, good podcast that I hated listening to, and a lot of people will hate listening to, really hard to review. So, like Laura, I'm going to have to go solid thumbs sideways on this one. All right, Laura, before we finish the show, I have a very important question for you. Speaking of animals that we place on pedestals.
Please don't be a whale. Please don't be a whale. Don't be a whale.
Do we have a cat of the week this week?
We do. So I've been on my tour of our northern regions in the state this winter doing some skiing. And one of my Exeter people has moved up there and retired. And his retirement job that he does one day a week is driving this giant thing to the top of Mount Washington. It's like the snowcat thing with the big tires. So I was like, that's cool. I think I might go on that and do a Leave It to Bricker about what happens. But there's a cat that lives at the Mount Washington Observatory.
There sure is.
They have always had a cat up there. So I believe, if my current research is correct, the current cat is Nimbus, who is a gray cat that has been there since 2021. So almost a century, they have had a cat living up in the observatory, this weather station.
Not the same cat.
Not the same cat. They've had when my son was little, we had a story about one of the cats. They had like a whole little children's book about one of these cats that lived up there. And so this current cat, Nimbus, he came to the Conway Area Humane Society from Oklahoma, and he's fuzzy and gray, and he was named after the rain clouds. So hopefully at some point this winter, if I am brave enough to go up Mount Washington, I might get to see Nimbus.
You have to go, Laura. You have to. And for listeners who don't know, Mount Washington in New Hampshire has literally the most severe weather on the planet.
The most worst weather.
Highest wind gusts ever recorded have all been recorded at Mount Washington, and it is fucking brutal up there. You have to go. You have to go.
I'm going. I'm going. I'm going to wear my new hot pink ski pants.
Yeah.
I've been hiking in August and gotten above the tree line, and it's been 30 degrees with 70-mile-an-hour winds and hail
wild.
And snow and stuff. And then you go back down, it's 75 and sunny at the bottom.
Yeah, it's wild.
It's weird.
All right, Laura Bricker, if folks want to reach you online and also encourage you to take the snowcat to the top of Mount Washington, how can they find you on social media?
You can find me at Laura Bricker on Instagram and the Blue Sky.
What about you, Toby? How can you be found online?
At Toby Ballin H.
Kevin Flynn.
I'm at Kevin Flynn on Blue Sky, Kevin P. Flynn elsewhere.
Yeah, I'm everywhere at Reb Lavoie, and the show is everywhere at Crime Writers On, except on Blue Sky, it's crimewriterson.com. It's a verified account, right, Kevin?
Mm-hmm.
Alex didn't even need to help us with that one.
It's true.
Get episodes early and ad-free at patreon.com/Partners in Crime Media. There you'll get all the other stuff we make, like 700 episodes of stuff. Our theme song was composed and performed by Ty Gibbons. Our editor is the wonderful Livy Burdett. The EP of this show is Kevin. This show was recorded in Studio C, the closet in our New Hampshire basement, where I also feed Kevin by banging hundreds of pounds of frozen haddock against the wall. It's true. That's what I do. On behalf of all the crime writers, thanks so much for listening. We will catch you later.
W, did you catch the promo clip for the Unborn episode?
With your laser eyes?
With your laser eyes?
I had laser eyes.
Kevin did laser eyes for you. Like those bad guys in Superman.
Why? Because I was like staring blankly.
Well, there's no art for this thing. Like there's the cover art for that, but the people don't exist. I don't like have any.
We don't know who they
photos.
are.
So what I literally did is I went into AI and just said, create pregnant women in scary woods and shit like this, and I just put weird stuff together. I just went fucking crazy with like vampire bats and explosions and fire and like weird shit.
I'll stick it on my LinkedIn.
Is it on Instagram now?
Yeah, it's on Instagram now.
Yeah, you can put it on your LinkedIn.
Let me look. Oh, here it is. On the next episode, The Unborn. Oh, Kevin, you look like you're having an attack.
Yes.
Oh God, I like the lightning bolts.
Yeah.
And the fire. It's like the Sheila LaBar fire. Toby, oh my God. He's like a Marvel superhero shooting flames out of his eyes.
Yeah.
In Crime Media.
Where'd you get those shoes? Easy. They're from DSW. Because DSW has the exact right shoes for whatever you're into right now. You know, like the sneakers that make office hours feel like happy hour. The boots that turn grocery aisles into runways. And all the styles that show off the many sides of you, from daydreamer to multitasker and everything in between. Because you do it all in really great shoes. Find a shoe for every you at your DSW store or DSW.com.